What do you mean someone slipped and cracked a rib and no one reported it? Zayden Price's voice cut through the boardroom like a cold blade. He tossed the manila folder onto the table, frustration tightening his jaw. He'd inherited the company from his father 6 years ago, taken it from a regional shipping chain to 11 locations across 4 states. But lately, something didn't sit right. Complaints buried, injuries ignored, turnover at one of the depots abnormally high. It was Store 9, the largest shipping depot in the system. District manager says it was handled, replied his operations director, eyes avoiding his. Zayden leaned back slowly. Handled by who? Why wasn't I told? He didn't wait for an answer. 2 days later, he was in a nondescript gray polo, steel toe boots, and a trucker hat pulled low. His beard had grown in over the last week. No one at Store 9 had ever met him in person. He'd never had time to visit this one. They'd only know him from the outdated corporate photo on the website, which he'd since taken down. Store 9 was a monster, over 100 employees rotating across 3 shifts. Packages came in from freight lines, got sorted, labeled, and sent out in delivery trucks. He arrived at 6 in the morning under the name Eric. New guy? A woman asked, walking by with a clipboard. Yeah, first day. Go see Reese near loading dock 2, he'll get you started. Reese, the floor manager, looked to be in his late 30s. Buzzed hair heavyset, sweat already on his brow. He didn't even glance up when Zayden introduced himself. Put on a vest. You're on sort line C, and don't stand around. You stand, you slow the line, you're out. Zayden nodded and kept quiet. He wasn't here to make friends. He was here to see the truth. By hour 2, his back ached. The conveyor belts moved fast and the heat in the warehouse was suffocating. No fans. Workers shouted over the noise. He noticed cracked pallets lying around, broken tape guns, and a few guys tossing boxes without checking labels. Then a loud thud. A tall kid, maybe 19, had slipped near dock 3. His foot had caught on a torn piece of shrink wrap left on the floor. He landed hard on his side, gasping in pain. Zayden stepped forward, instinct kicking in. Hey, you all right? The kid winced. Think I messed up my ribs, man. Zayden turned toward Reese, who was only a few feet away. He needs help. Should we call someone? Reese walked over, looked down at the kid and said, You can walk. I don't know. Then try or go sit out back. I ain't got time for drama. Zayden blinked. He could be seriously hurt. You a doctor now. He's breathing. He's fine. The kid groaned and tried to stand, barely making it upright. Reese didn't help, just turned and walked off. Zayden looked around. No one else stepped in. No first aid. No incident report. Nothing. He followed the kid outside, helped him sit on a wooden pallet near the dumpsters. What's your name? Braylon. You tell anyone else what happened? Braylon shook his head. What's the point? They don't care, man. I'm part-time. They'll just cut my shifts. Zayden clenched his fists. Has this happened before? All the time. Last week a guy crushed his hand and they told him to walk it off. Zayden stayed quiet for a long moment. He dealt with tough managers before, but this was something else. This was negligence. Back inside, he watched Reese scream at a woman for loading boxes too slow. She looked close to tears. Another guy had his earbuds in and was clearly ignoring orders, but Reese didn't say a word to him. Favoritism. Unsafe conditions. No accountability. At lunch, he found a quiet corner near the vending machines. A young woman in her 30s sat beside him, eating a peanut butter sandwich from a paper towel. You're new? She asked. Yeah, Eric, I'm fallen. Been here 4 years. You'll learn to keep your head down. He looked at her. You ever think of leaving? She gave a dry laugh. I'm a single mom. I don't have that luxury. Zayden studied her. She had tired eyes, but her voice was calm, steady. She didn't complain. She just worked. You ever get hurt here? Twisted my ankle last year. No one said a word. I wrapped it myself in the bathroom, finished my shift. Zayden swallowed hard. That night in his truck, he stared at the depot from the parking lot. He'd seen enough to know this wasn't just mismanagement. It was a culture, and he'd let it fester. He gripped the steering wheel, jaw clenched. Tomorrow, he'd stay for the evening shift. He wanted to see what happened when the lights went dim and the oversight got looser. But soon, Reese would find out who Eric really was. And when he did, there'd be no more hiding behind clipboards and excuses. Not anymore. The loading ramp lights buzzed overhead as dusk settled over Store 9. Zayden had swapped shifts with a younger guy who looked grateful to head home early. The overnight crew was smaller, leaner, and the energy in the building shifted noticeably less structured, more tense. A man named Joel ran the night floor. Mid-40s, narrow eyes, with a voice just loud enough to sting without shouting. He didn't bother with introductions when Zayden showed up, just handed him a barcode scanner and waved him toward the sorting area. "Keep up, don't ask dumb questions, and if your feet hurt, too bad," Joel said, barely slowing his stride as he passed a group of workers unloading a late truck. Zayden followed orders, keeping his head down while watching everything. Joel paced the floor with a clipboard, but never touched a single package. He barked out orders, made sarcastic comments when someone dropped a box, and disappeared into the office for long stretches at a time. What caught Zayden's attention wasn't just the lack of leadership, it was how the crew reacted to him. They flinched when he approached. They rushed tasks in ways that caused mistakes. One woman flubbed a scan, and Joel loudly told her maybe she should try working at a coffee shop instead. The air was brittle. No one laughed. No one made eye contact. Around 9, Zayden was assigned to work next to a stocky guy named Darnell, who looked like he'd been through a few too many of these shifts. "You knew?" Darnell asked, scanning a package with practiced speed. "Second day. Good luck, man." "Just don't screw up when Joel's watching or you'll never hear the end of it." Zayden raised an eyebrow. "He always like this." Darnell didn't look up. "Worse than you think. Last week he threw a clipboard at a temp, missed, but still. Nobody says anything." Different rules after dark. Zayden nodded slowly and kept working. The pattern was clear. Joel was unchecked, and the fear ran deep. More than once, Zayden saw him walk past an obviously incorrect load and say nothing. But if someone took too long hydrating at the water station, he called them out over the intercom. At one point, a young woman named Kiara, barely 20, by the look of her, asked for a second to catch her breath. She'd been lifting heavy boxes nonstop for over an hour. Joel walked over, leaned in close enough that she backed up a step, and said, "If you can't handle the weight, maybe you should stick to yoga class." Zayden froze. Kiara's face went blank. She nodded and got back to it. That was the last straw. Zayden quietly pulled out his phone and messaged his HR director with a single sentence. "Be at store 9 at 7 a.m. I'll explain everything." He put the phone away. As the shift wore on, things only got worse. At midnight, a delivery driver limped into the building. His right pant leg was torn and a scrape bled along his shin. Joel saw him, rolled his eyes, and muttered, "What now?" "Tripped on the back step of truck 24, the driver said, wincing. "It's loose again." "We fixed that last month," Joel snapped. "It's still loose." "I caught it on the step rail and went down hard." Joel didn't look at the injury. "Then watch your step next time. Wipe it off and get back out there." "You're not going to log it," Joel shrugged. "You want to file paperwork and hold up the whole schedule." "If you can walk, you can drive." Zayden stepped in before the driver could respond. "Where's the first aid kit?" Joel turned, clearly annoyed. "Why do you care?" "Because if he gets back in that truck and something happens, it's on all of us." Joel laughed. "New guy thinks he's in charge." "That's cute." Zayden held his gaze. "He needs a rap and a report logged. That's not a suggestion." Joel stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "You don't tell me how to run my shift. You barely know how to hold a scanner." Zayden didn't move. "And you barely know how to run a depot." Joel blinked. "Excuse me." Zayden pulled off his hat. "You heard me." Darnell, Kiara, and 2 others stopped what they were doing. The room shifted in an instant. "Name's not Eric," Zayden said. "It's Zayden Price. I own this company, and I've seen enough." Joel's face drained of color. This is a joke, right?" "No, but what you've been doing to these people is," Zayden said coldly. "Every word and every decision you've made since I walked in here has been documented." He turned toward the crew. "You've all been working under conditions that are unacceptable. Unsafe trucks. No reporting, intimidation, and I'm not letting it go another night." Joel stammered, trying to recover. "Look, I didn't know sometimes people exaggerate out here. You told someone with a visible injury to wipe it off. You mocked someone for asking for a break. You threatened workers into silence. You're done here." Joel looked around, but no one stepped forward to defend him. Zayden turned to the delivery driver. You're off the road until you get checked out. I'll pay for the clinic visit myself. The driver nodded slowly, stunned. Zayden looked back at Joel. Hand over your badge. Now. Joel hesitated, then tossed it onto a nearby cart. Without another word, he walked out. Zayden exhaled. The warehouse was quiet, everyone unsure what came next. Take 15, he said. All of you, then we'll finish the shift together. No one leaves until every package is loaded properly and safely. And tomorrow morning, we're going to have a longer conversation, this time with chairs. They didn't cheer. No one clapped, but one by one they moved toward the break area, silent but visibly lighter. Zayden stayed behind, hands on his hips, scanning the floor. The night had cracked open everything he feared, a culture built on fear, not standards. On silence, not structure. He wasn't just changing a manager, he was rebuilding trust, and that, he knew, would take more than a speech. It would take showing up. Every damn day. The morning after the night shift confrontation, Zayden arrived at Store 9 just before sunrise. He didn't bother with the disguise. His beard was trimmed, his usual blazer ditched in favor of a plain navy pullover. He stood just inside the break room doorway, watching as the first wave of day shift workers filtered in, bleary-eyed and cautious. Some recognized him from the night before. Others paused mid-step when they saw his face, unsure if they were looking at a corporate visitor or something else. Fallon stepped through the door, still in her faded hoodie, her hair tied back in a loose braid. She froze when she saw him. I need to talk to everyone, Zayden said, loud enough to carry. 15 minutes of your time and then I'll get out of your way. No one moved. Then Fallon walked over and stood beside him. Quiet but deliberate. That was enough. Chairs scraped across the floor, coffee cups were set down, people gathered. Zayden stood in front of the vending machine, arms folded. I won't waste your time with speeches. You've all been dealing with things I should have caught months ago. I didn't, that's on me. No one interrupted. I went undercover because I didn't trust the reports I was getting. I needed to see it myself, and what I saw was unacceptable. He turned to Fallon. You said something to me yesterday. You said you didn't have the luxury of leaving. That stuck with me. No one here should feel trapped. He looked at the rest of them. Starting today, Store 9 is under direct review. That includes staffing, safety, shift schedules, and management. A man near the window leaned forward. What about Reese? He's suspended, pending investigation. Last night was your floor manager's last shift. A temporary lead will be here this afternoon, and I'll be assigning a permanent replacement within the week. A woman in a pink windbreaker raised her hand. Does this mean you're closing the depot? No, Zayden said, but the way it's been run until now. That's over. He saw the tension in their shoulders, the years of silent endurance. No one cheered. They weren't ready for that. But the silence was different this time, less resigned, more alert. Listening, after the meeting, he pulled Fallon aside. I need help identifying who's been holding this place together. Who shows up early, stays late, trains the new hires even when no one asks. She hesitated. I can give you names, but some of them won't speak up. They've been ignored too long. Then I'll come to them. She nodded once. Start with Darnell. Zayden spent the next hour on the floor, clipboard in hand, not to supervise, but to learn. He asked about scanner errors, packaging delays, shift overlaps. He didn't delegate. He recorded everything himself. 2 delivery trucks came in late. One had a rear door that barely latched. The driver, a woman with a sharp gait and sunburned cheeks, looked irritated but professional. Door's been like that since last week, she said, hopping down from the cab. I filed a maintenance request. No one followed up. What's your name, Maritza? You still driving with a faulty latch? I don't have a choice. You miss a run, it reflects on your record. Not anymore, Zayden said. Keys, she blinked. What? He held out his hand. I'm grounding this truck until it's fixed. We'll reroute your load to another vehicle. That'll knock me out of commission for the day. I'll pay your day rate in full while the truck's inspected. She stared at him for a second, then handed over the keys. That afternoon, HR arrived on site. Zayden met them in the back office, where he sorted through internal complaints dating back over a year. Several had been marked resolved without further notes. A few were signed off by Reese himself. Zayden handed one to the HR lead. This one's from a temp named Joshua White. Twisted his wrist, asked for light duty. Got sent home instead. Same shift as Joel. Revisit every complaint he and Reese touched. I want to know who got shut down and who deserves a second look. In the afternoon, he brought Darnell in for a one-on-one. The man sat stiffly, arms crossed, eyes flicking to the corners of the room like he expected a trap. I'm not here to test you, Zayden said. I'm here to listen. Darnell nodded once but didn't speak. You've been here a while. 4 years, 5 come December. You ever been promoted? Nope. Ever asked? Twice. First time they said I didn't have the team presence. Second time they said I had too many unexcused pauses. That was after I stayed late 3 weeks straight because we were short. Zayden leaned forward. You have any training experience? Every new guy ends up with me. Not official, but they all come to me when they're stuck. You want to lead? Darnell looked surprised. I thought I wasn't the type. I'm rewriting the type. Darnell didn't smile, but his posture eased a fraction. Tomorrow, you're shadowing our regional supervisor. If that goes well and you still want it, we'll start onboarding for an assistant floor lead position. Darnell stood but didn't leave. You know, we've had folks like you visit before. Say the right things, disappear in a week. I'm not disappearing. Then I'll hold you to it. By the end of the day, Zayden had spoken with 10 employees individually. He kept his questions practical. What slows you down? What isn't working? What's never been fixed? He didn't write policies. He wrote notes. Real ones. That evening, a fresh face arrived on site. Her name was Layla Ward, temporary floor lead, brought in from another district that had recently turned around its performance. She didn't wear a suit. She wore cargo pants and a tee with the company's faded logo. She met with the night crew before the shift started. I'm not here to lecture you, she said. I'm here to clean house, and that starts with asking you what needs cleaning. They stared at her, unsure how to react. She pointed to the back of the room. What's one thing that breaks down at least once a week? The C-line scanner, someone mumbled. Tomorrow, it'll be replaced. Another worker raised a hand. What about overtime? We're always short. Give me names. I'll review shift balances myself. Zayden watched from the doorway, arms folded. Layla didn't try to win them over. She gave them tasks, not promises. That was the right kind of leadership for this place. As the shift began, he stepped outside, the air cooler now, the sky faded to a dull gray. The depot still needed repairs. Staffing gaps remained. Trust would take months to rebuild, but the silence inside had changed. People were talking, not whispering. Talking, that was a start. He pulled out his phone and called his assistant. Cancel my travel for the next 2 weeks. I'm staying local. You sure? I've got work to do, real work. When he hung up, he stood still for a long moment. Store 9 wasn't fixed, but for the first time in a long time, it wasn't broken in silence. By the following Monday, Zayden was already on site before the warehouse lights buzzed on. He'd set up a temporary operations desk in the back office, no nameplate, no assistant, just a folding table, a laptop, and a growing stack of internal memos. He wasn't playing executive anymore. He'd made a promise, and now he was buried in the follow-through. Fallon tapped on the open doorframe before stepping in. Her expression was cautious but focused. We've got 2 people out sick today. One missed the last 2 shifts, she said. That leaves the outbound dock short by 3. Darnell's trying to shuffle the line assignments, but it's tight. Zayden stood up. I'll cover outbound. Just tell him to hand me a scanner. Fallon hesitated. You sure? I'm not here to tour anything. I'm here to work. She nodded and disappeared down the hallway. He followed after grabbing gloves from the supply rack and pulling on a reflective vest. On the dock, Darnell was checking tag sheets against the outgoing manifest. He glanced over when Zayden approached, but didn't say anything at first. Then he handed him a tablet and pointed to a stack of crates. Next 4 shipments are going to the Syracuse branch. Labels are preloaded. Just verify weight and wrap tight. Zayden started loading. The work was fast and physical. His shoulder ached from the awkward angles, but he didn't slow down. No one treated him differently, not anymore. He was just another pair of hands trying to keep the schedule from slipping. By midday, HR had finalized the personnel audit. Zayden called a meeting in the break room, but only for 4 people. Fallon, Darnell, the HR lead, and a young man named Lewis, who'd quietly emerged as the most reliable sorter on the late shift. He stood as they gathered around the corner table. We've completed internal reviews on every complaint, performance issue, and missed maintenance request from the last 6 months. It's worse than we thought, he said, tapping the tablet in front of him. Some reports were falsified, others were never submitted. 3 safety violations were deliberately erased from the system. Fallon crossed her arms. How far up does it go? Just Reese and Joel. Everyone else either didn't know or tried to escalate. We've got statements, timestamps, and corroboration. HR's already processed the terminations. Lewis looked up from the floor. Are people going to think we let it happen? Zayden shook his head. No, and if anyone outside this depot asks, they'll get the truth. This wasn't a team failure. This was 2 unchecked people abusing their positions. They're out permanently. He turned to Darnell. Effective next week, you're stepping in as interim floor lead. Layla's staying on for the next 2 months as support, but you're running point. Darnell didn't respond right away. Then he said, You still planning to be here after that? Zayden didn't hesitate. Every week. Until this place runs the way it should have from the start. That afternoon, a new shipment of safety equipment arrived. Upgraded harnesses, non-slip mats for the loading bays, and 2 portable misting fans for the summer heat. Fallon oversaw the installation without needing instructions. She had a way of moving through the space that made people adjust without being told. Later, Zayden caught up with her near the intake ramp. HR told me you never filed a single complaint, not once, she shrugged. Didn't see the point. I figured if I kept my head down and worked hard, I'd stay off the radar. And if you hadn't, I'd have been out of a job. He leaned against the wall beside her. You ever think about stepping into a supervisor role? Fallon gave him a long look. You offering it because I deserve it, or because you feel guilty, because you've earned it every day you showed up and didn't quit. She didn't speak right away, then said, Then I'll take it. But I want one thing first. What's that? Don't forget what it looked like when you weren't watching. Zayden nodded. I won't. By the week's end, the depot had gone through 3 full restructuring meetings. Shift overlaps were reduced to prevent burnout. Every truck was inspected and logged before being cleared for routes. 2 part-timers were converted to full-time to stabilize the packaging line. Maritza, the delivery driver with the busted latch, returned after her vehicle passed inspection. Zayden met her near Dock 5. You checked it yourself, she asked. I did. She tapped the side of the truck. You're not what I expected, neither is this place, not anymore. She gave a short nod and climbed into the cab without another word. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted. People still moved fast, but not out of fear. There was a rhythm now. Workers called out weights, verified pallets, double-checked dock doors. The difference wasn't loud. It was in the way people carried themselves, not hunched, not rushed, just steady. Zayden sat with Lewis and Fallon during a short break. Lewis was studying a training guide on the tablet, eyes focused. You thinking about cross-training? Zayden asked. Lewis nodded. Eventually, I want to learn routing, maybe dispatch. Fallon glanced at him. You never said that before. Didn't think it mattered, he said. Now it does. Zayden watched him for a moment. You'll start shadowing dispatch next Thursday. Talk to Layla about prep. Lewis looked stunned. Seriously? Seriously. By the end of the shift, the floor was clean, the manifest was balanced, and the break room, once quiet and stiff, buzzed with low conversation and shared meals. Someone had brought in a bag of fresh bagels. Small gesture, but it stuck. Before leaving, Zayden walked the entire floor one last time. Not as a formality, he stopped, checked, asked questions. He spoke to every person still on duty. The answers weren't rehearsed, they were practical. Real. He stepped outside into the lot where the trucks lined up under the setting sun. The asphalt still radiated heat. He leaned against the railing beside the stairs and looked back at the building. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't polished, but it was honest now. That was enough for today. He pulled out his phone and called the operations director. Store 9 is stable, he said. We're not just changing policy, we're changing culture. I want a rotating leadership residency program at every major depot starting here. No more remote decisions. We build from the floor up or not at all. The voice on the other end hesitated, then said, Understood. Zayden ended the call. He didn't need to be undercover anymore. He didn't need a disguise to see the truth. He just needed to be present, Every week, every depot, every voice, not from behind a desk, but beside the people who kept the company standing. And this time, he wasn't going anywhere.